Let's have some fun. So we've been working on our animation and our scene. Today we're going to focus on adding a weapon and animating that weapon inside of our scene to our skeleton. Now, actually, there's not a whole lot left due to the project. We need to get the weapon working and animating. We need to add our drones. Then we need to add combat, and then keeping score. How we're going to keep score for the game. So we're actually very close to that. My plan is we're hopefully going to have this project finished before spring break, if all goes according to what I've got worked out. Then after spring break, we're going to use Unreal to create a multiplayer game and doing multiplayer simulation. So that should work out very well. We'll spend about 3 or 4 weeks doing that, and then we'll do a major project for the class. So let's get started. In your Unreal, I'm assuming everybody has Unreal started by now. If you haven't learned to get it started before class starts, it's like, what are you doing? This is week 7. This is week 7. I know. Semester's just zipping right by. We're going to go to our blueprints, to our character, and we're going to load up our blueprint first-person shooter character, which is actually just arms. And I'm going to jump over here to the viewport. So I've got my arms there. It's currently idling. Not anything really exciting, but it is there. I want to add a gun component to my scene. So with my first-person shooter character selected, we're going to add a skeletal mesh component. So add, and then you can type it up at the top, skeletal. And we're going to add a skeletal mesh. And you'll see that added to your thing. It's going to say it wants to name it skeletal mesh, but we're going to instead call it gun. Because guess what? It's going to be the gun. Yes, I know, it's shocking. Then with gun selected, we're going to go over here to our details, and let's go down to the mesh and select a gun. I think it's rifle. I'm going to go SKFP gun because that's what I found. And you can see it has now been added to my scene. It is facing the wrong direction. But that's okay. We're not going to change it in here. We're going to change it for how it attaches to our hand. Now, you might remember, if you've played a lot of first-person shooter games or created games, that you can attach objects to something. What do we usually call the thing that we attach objects to in a game? Socket? Socket? Socket in? Socket? Socket? Anyone socket? So let's add a socket. So I'm going to go to my character mesh, back in which one do I need? I need my character mesh, so the arms, and I want to find the mesh, There's my mesh. I'm going to double click on the mesh to open it up. So this is my arms mesh. We've left our blueprint first person shooter and we're going straight into the mesh. And then in my skeletal tree over here, I've got a tab for asset details and a skeletal tree. I'm going to work my way down the skeletal tree and find the hand right bone. There's hand left, and pinky thumb, etc. There's hand right. So now I've got my hand right bone. I lost everybody. I'm back on my blueprint first person character with the mesh selected. I went over here in the details to the mesh and double clicked on the arms.
Can you still do this if you have the Bianca?
Yes.
If you're using Bianca, it's going to be the same thing.
So there is a slight difference depending on whatever Belica you're using. Bianca.
Yeah.
Well, if you're using Belica, she comes with the weapon
Already attached.
Yeah, it
okay.
depends on her animation state, I believe.
Okay, but you're still going to need the socket so that it aligns properly with the hand.
Right.
So if you're using Belica, double click on it still.
Yeah.
And it should open up with your mesh, except it's going to be Belica instead of just the arms. And you still need to find the hand right. Are we finding it? Is our hand right for Belica?
I don't know if we can access.
Because, yeah, Belica's already probably rigged properly with the socket.
Yeah,
It's
all socketed for her already.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you how to do this. If you're using the arms, this is the process that we use. If you're using just the Belica, you may not need to do this process. So I've got my hand right selected. You can see the bones are highlighted here. I'm going to right click on hand right. And I'm going to click on, oh, look at that, add socket. So we're adding a hand socket to the right hand. And that's where we will attach the weapon to that socket. So I'm going to now go back to my first-person shooter. I'll save this. Go back to your first-person shooter character. There's our weapon. I'm going to change my animation to one that holds the gun. So I don't want the idle right now. I'm going to use animation asset and choose one of the assets that has the arms holding the gun. Maybe rifle idle. Yeah. FP rifle idle. There we go. And now I'm going to rotate the gun so that it is lined up with the hands. Now this is kind of you got to fiddle with it till it looks the way you want it to look. But we do want the hands to be, or the gun to be properly aligned with the gun. So to begin with, I'm going to slide the gun up a little bit. Then I'm going to rotate it. And let's pull it forward a little bit. And then we're just going to keep doing this until we've got the gun basically aligned and rotated the way we want. I'm going to change to the top perspective to give me a better view of how the gun is aligned. And we may need to adjust snapping. If it's jumping too big, it's because your snapping is on. So you can turn that off. And you may need to turn off the snapping for both the movement as well as the rotation angle. And I'll go back here to perspective. That's looking pretty close to how I want it. May need to lower it just a little bit so that it's actually resting on the hand. And I'm going to go here to the right side. Let's lower it just a little bit. Bring it back just a little bit so the hand's lined up with the trigger. It's looking pretty good. Okay, so my gun's now lined up. And if I jump into my game, I'm going to save and compile. Jump back to my game and run it, I should see the character. And there's the gun. Woohoo! Now, again, you need to adjust the arms and the gun to where you're going to be happy with them. If that's too low for you in the scene, then lower your camera or lift your arms and your gun. But the idea is to get the gun and the arm lined up so that we can see everything looking the way we want it to. Okay, going back to first person, my blueprint first person shooter. And let's go to our event graph. Okay. Now let's add, I'm sorry. Oh, I hate it when that happens. Okay, so we've got our gun. I'm in the event graph back on my blueprint first person shooter character, and I need to add the gun to my event graph. So I'm going to just simply drag gun in. Okay, that's not working. Why isn't that working? Oh, I'm running. I'm still in the simulation. That would do it. Okay, turn off the simulation, and then we can drag the gun in. And we're going to off the gun, drag off that, and we're going to add a attached component. Let's see, which one is it? So attach component to component, or I think it's attached component to component. So we need to attach the gun and tell it what socket it is attaching to. So what do we name our socket back here on our mannequin arms? Hand underscore R socket. So I'm going to get that name, hand underscore R socket, and add that to my socket names. And we'll just type that in. Hand underscore R socket. Save. And now the gun is attached to the socket component. Using programming. There's programming in this. And we want it to, for location rule, keep it relative, or keep to world, or snap to target. We actually want it to snap to target for the rotation and for the location. Scale does not need to change any. And that should be ready to go. So we've now attached the gun to the hand socket. There we go.
You said the rotate target is what?
Yes, the rotation snap to target and location snap to target. Now, how frequently does this need to run? Yeah, when the game starts. It only actually needs to attach the gun one time. So it only needs to happen on event play. But this can also be done in Unreal as part of a construction script. In other words, when the game is starting, add these components to my character or to my scene. That is referred to as a construction script. If you look up here at the top, you've got viewport, construction script, and event graph. So I'm going to jump over here to construction script. Right now, it has one object in there with nothing attached to it saying construction script. So I'm going to go back here to event graph. I've got my gun and my attached components selected, and I'm going to hit Control X to cut that, or right click and cut that, and go back here to construction and paste it. Now, I can tell it to run this when it starts. So it's not using up my event graph, and it only runs one time when I'm starting the scene. Isn't that cool? That's right. That's pretty cool. It only runs before the game starts. So now in our viewport, there's our gun. Everything's looking good. Yay.
You said that we did that with the event.
Yeah, I took it out of the event graph and put it into the construction. Everything good? Cool. So, what's next? Well, if you notice in our animations, we have two sets of animations. We've got one that is for aiming the gun and one that is for more of an idle holding the gun. So we're going to update our animations, which we worked on last week, to include the animations for aiming. because we've got an idle aiming and an idle walking, or holding the gun. So let's update that. I'm going to, first of all, well, let's save our character. I'm going to jump to my content drawer and go back to my inputs. Right now, I've got jumping, looking, and moving. We need to be able to hit a key and bring the gun up as if I am aiming. So we need an input action for aiming. So let's create one. Right click, input, input action, and I'm going to call this IA underscore aiming. I am aiming. I'm going to open that, and yes, it should be Boolean, right? Because you're either aiming or you're not aiming. So I can close the aiming, go back here to my content drawer, and guess what? We need to update the IMC if we've got now have an aiming. So content drawer, back to your inputs, and we're going to open up the IMC FPS character. Currently, I've got moving, looking, jumping. Let's add aiming. And what button are we going to use? Let's use the mouse, specifically the right mouse button. So click on that, hit the right mouse button, and you can see it now has the right mouse button associated with it. There aren't going to be any other triggers or modifiers with this. We're just telling it when they hit the right mouse button, bring the gun up so that we can aim it. So we'll shift animations because of that.
When you have a trigger for like if you hold down the right mouse, then it aims if you're
Yes. So it's either the right mouse button is triggered or it's not. You're thinking the right direction. Yes.
Oh, I was just looking for the triggers and there's a trigger called forward. I didn't know if that was something.
No, we're not going to use that right now because I want you to learn how to build it. Because I'm being that way. Okay, so we've got that. Back in our, okay, we need to save. And we can close our IMC and go back to our character. And let's see. Where is my animations? Go back to character, animation, and then I'm going to go to my blueprint FPS animate. Open that up. Remember this fun thing? This is where we were adding all of our animations. So we're going to change our animation results on this from just simply doing idle and walking to holding the gun for idle and walking. So we need to update this whole process for doing that. To do that, we're going to need a new variable. Currently we have is moving. We also need to have is aiming. So I'm going to hit the plus sign by variable and say is aiming. Notice that beside this, there's a little closed I. That means that currently is aiming is not a public variable. It is a private variable. We're going to need to be able to call on this in other routines, so we need to make this into a public variable. Anybody want to guess on how to do that? But click the I, yeah. Now it's a public variable. Just like that. So now we've exposed it to the rest of the blueprint system. And I'm going to save this, compile it, and I'm going to go back to my blueprint first-person shooter character. Now, in our variables, that's not showing up there in the variables yet. We can go to the mesh and drag the mesh into the event graph. To get access to that variable, we're going to drag off of the mesh, and I'm going to look for get animation should be get anim, helps if you spell it right. Get anim instance. There, right there. Get anim instance. And we want it to return the value of what is it aiming or not. So get the anim instance, and we're going to use this to cast. So I'm dragging off return value, and I'm going to cast to the FPS blueprint FPS anim. Cast to blueprint FPS anim. And that will tell me if this is working or not. Now we need this to run from the event begin play, which has already got things going on right here. So we can't really just drag it over. Instead, I can highlight all three of these. I'm going to scroll this over. And this is now going to be run after the mapping context for our animations. So basically, when we launch the program, we're going to have this run. But wait, there's more. This is actually a very expensive processing operation. It can be simplified to store all of this as a variable instead of doing this casting, because casting goes back down to the base engine. It's checking, are we clicking the right mouse button? What's happening with the mesh? It only needs to run once, and we do need to store it as a variable so that we can then access it from other tools. So I'm going to go up here to where it says as BP FPS anim, and I'm going to right click on this and tell it I want to promote this to a variable. Now we've set a variable for holding all of this. I right clicked on as BP FPS, right click, told it to promote to variable. And then, where's our variables at? There, as you can see in our components underneath the variables, it's calling this as BP FPS animation. Well, that's a little confusing, so let's rename that. And I'm just going to call it this is calling my animation blueprint. And that's going to be my variable name. So I renamed it from that as BP FPS anim to animation blueprint. And that is now my variable. And you can see it's still associated with what's happening up here. Okay. Next thing we need to do is set up our aiming. Now we've already set up our action, right? Have I lost everybody? We're doing okay? There's just a lot of steps to this. We'll get through it. And we're actually more than halfway through all of this. So you're doing great. So let's add our aiming. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to type in IA aiming. And we're going to add our action event for aiming. Now I'm going to drag in my animation blueprint variable that we just created, and this is a get. We want to get the current status of are they aiming or not. Then I can from are they triggered? Triggered? Are you triggered? We're going to check we're going to set is aiming. Where is aiming? It's not showing up.
Turn off context sensitive.
Oh, thank you. Yep, there it is. So we're going to set is aiming. And that we're pulling from our animation blueprint. If it is triggered, then we want this to be a true value. So click the check mark. If it is completed, in other words, they release the right mouse button, we're going to set is aiming. To false. Save this, compile it. We're moving right through this. It actually took me much longer to write my notes to do this than it's taking us to go through this. So we're going to go back to our blueprint, first-person shooter, animation. And I want to go to the locomotion. So we're going to double-click on that, which is locomotion is what? Yes, it's keeping track of our current state. It's our state machine. It's keeping track of which animation we're in. So we're going to double click on locomotion. And you can see that it is currently set to idle for my animation. We're going to disconnect that from the entry to the idle. So hold down on the control key, click entry, and now it's disconnected. And I'm going to just drag these up. Now, from my entry, I'm going to create two new states. One for aiming and one is not aiming. So drag off the entry, new state, or add state. And the first one is going to be is aiming, or aiming. And we'll create another add state, and not aiming. Now we're going to be jumping back and forth between these two, right? How did we connect animations so that we can shift between them? How do we do transitions? Yes, drag from the gray outer box to the other gray outer box. And then we want it to be able to shift back. So drag from the gray box back to the first box. And so now we have two transitions. Let's see. I'm going to highlight my idle and my walking. And I'm going to hit the Control X to cut them. And then go into not aiming. And paste them in. Do I need to create a new state machine first? Yes, we do. So let's create a new state machine. Here we go. And paste.
We need to grab the sequence player from inside both the idle and the flex here. and place them in.
That's what I thought I was.
Well, you would copy the,
Copy the entire thing on the outside, so like.
Oh, okay. Yes. Actually, we don't have to copy them. We can just go back to. We can go back to animation and add. So this is our aiming state. What animation are we going to use with that? How about rifle forward? Well, that'd be rifle fire, wouldn't it? Yeah, I think that'd be rifle fire. Yeah, we're going to go with rifle fire for that. So that's my aiming state. I'll save, compile. Okay, I haven't done it not aiming yet.
Okay, we're not copying and pasting.
Yeah, we're not copying and pasting. We're just setting it up.
Okay.
So I'm going to my not aiming state. And in that case, it's going to be rifle idle. Right? Says I've got an error. Oh, because I've not set up my transitions. Okay, so let's go back to locomotion and set up our transitions. So just like our transitions that we had done before for locomotion, is moving was what we were using before. This time we are using, for transitioning from is aiming. Yeah, we're transitioning from is aiming to not aiming. Then we're going to need to use is aiming. And we're going to get that value Now, if it's going to not aiming, then we need to include a not in this, correct? So not, Boolean. There we go. Save. And now we can go back to locomotion and add the not aiming back to aiming. So is aiming. It is aiming, and then to our can enter transition. Save. There we go. And you can see it is now 100% not aiming. Right? Now, are we happy with our animations? We've got our rifle idle for not aiming. That's correct. And we've got rifle fire for aiming. Also correct.
We did not make that mistake.
No, we did not. I was wrong. Write that down. It doesn't happen very often. So I'll get rid of idle and walk. Don't need those anymore. And we'll save, compile. There we go. Everything's successful. Yay! It's looking good. All right. So we've got our rifle. That's in there. It would be nice if something happened when we shot the rifle, right? Maybe a muzzle flash. Get something visual happening inside the scene. That'd be nice, right? A particle effect. Ooh. So let's have a particle effect. So I'm going to jump back to my first-person shooter character. Go over to viewport. And I'm going to select the gun because I want to attach the particle effect to the gun. Right? That would make sense. So let's do that. So I've got the gun selected. I'm going to click add and we're going to search for scene. So we're going to add a scene to the object. And this is for our muzzle flash. So I'm just going to call it flash. Because it will run real fast. You can see your object is down here at the bottom. Let's move it up. And I'm going to move it to the end of the muzzle, out just a little bit. Just scene. I went to gun, selected gun, and clicked add scene. Make sure that you've got your muzzle flash lined up with the end of your gun, centered. There we go. Well, how are we going to fire? Left click, which means I need another input action. So content drawer, back to my blueprints, go to inputs. It's just a Boolean, right? I'm either firing or I'm not firing.
Yes.
So let's just simply copy is aiming. I can duplicate that, rename it to IA fire or firing, and then go into my IMC and add firing. IA firing. There it is. And that's going to be associated with my left mouse button. So when I click on the left mouse button, it'll fire. We'll save that. And let's add some particle effects. So I'm going to go down here and look at particle effects. Go to the content drawer, and in your Bellica character, I'm going to go to FX, surprise, particles, another surprise, Bellica, because it's the only option. And then let's go to abilities and primary. And then there's another FX folder. And look, we've got FX things. We've got Bellica getting hit, Bellica hitting the world, and Bellica muzzle. I think I'm going to go with Bellica muzzle. Double click on that. And this opens up the Cascade system, which is the legacy system for using particle effects. And you can see it's running occasionally there. Looks like it does a series of 3 shots every single time. Yeah, it's a burst weapon. I don't want 3 shots. I only want 1 shot fired. So let's modify that on that shell ejection. Of course, the gun I've got doesn't look like something that would have a lot of shells, but we'll just go with it. So I'm going to go over here. First of all, the final one, it says shells ejected. And if I go down to, I think it's advanced. Nope, not advanced. Let's see. We've got our particle effect, shell eject. Got emitters. Got significance. Let's look at I'm sorry?
On the show, which I got like third one, that says spawn.
Spawn. Click on, oh, there we go. Yes, thank you. Where's the burst list? Yes. So select spawn, go to burst list, and you'll see that you've got 1, 2, 3. We're going to get rid of 1 and 2. So I'm going to hit the down arrow there and tell it to delete. Down arrow, delete, and now I've only got 1 array element. And now we just have 1 shell ejecting. If you don't want a shell ejecting at all, you can get rid of that. But wait, there's more. We've got the burst you can see here. It's actually doing a little bit more. So I'm going to go back here to muzzle spawn. And again, I'm going to get rid of the burst list and get it down to just simply 1 burst. And then we could do the same for muzzle flame. Select the spawn, get rid of the extra burst. And then I think smoke burst is probably okay. Yeah, that looks, there's just 1 smoke burst.
Flare, that has to.
Which one?
Flare. Go to
Flare?
Flare right there, and then go to spawn.
Splan, yeah, flare. Okay, let's get rid of those extra as well. There.
It's also in there as well.
You have everything that's smoke first and then flash and CCD.
Well, wait, reflection has 2, right? I guess it's just normal. Yeah, I guess I oh, wait. Right. reflection is nothing to do with it. Right?
Okay, so we now have everything down to just simply one element of array in the burst list. Isn't that cool? So just like that, we changed our particle effect.
Was your aiming work? Because when I tried to like test the aiming, I got a lot of errors.
Did you?
Very broken.
Yeah.
It's not working.
I just disconnected it and plugged it by 100 milliamperes. But it is not.
I don't even remember what the error was. I just remember like, I did not like it.
It didn't look like it.
Yeah, nothing's happening. So the animation's not firing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do some troubleshooting. Oh, there's a whole bunch of errors. Access not trying to read property animation blueprint. Okay, let's figure out what's going on.
It looks like it's not pointing at the right thing.
It's the variable for the animation blueprint. The
On
variable
our
that-
event graph,
Yeah, that.
the set animation blueprint,
Yeah, it doesn't have anything in there. It's just none.
okay.
Oh, what happened to the let's get
Okay, did I drag the gun or the mesh? It's supposed to be the mesh, according to my notes. Yeah, it's still not working. And we're not firing either. I haven't added that to the blueprint. Arms instead of mesh. Well, and it would make a difference if you're using Bellica or arms as well. You're just using arms, okay. Anybody with Bellica, is it working? Those who were using Bellica? No, still not working? Okay.
Because Mac is actually good.
all of it.
It does something. It moves it up upwards and I like it.
Okay.
That's terrible. Like I just character much zeros energy. The skeleton asset, but then I have the mannequin arm. Honestly, this is.
Well, where do you think I know the big John?
Well, that should be back on your BP FPS anim.
I didn't put mine walking there. I don't.
I didn't either.
That's the right.
For mine. So. Go to your report. I want to look at.
Event port or viewport?
viewport. And then click on your, or click on mesh on the hierarchy. Okay, so yours is that. Mine wasn't, like I just dragged in another thing of arms.
Okay.
Because I didn't realize. And so the values arms at words.
Oh, I didn't switch back to blueprint. That would make a difference. Yeah, if you don't have your blueprint set for your mesh, that it's using the blueprint, it's trying to use the assets. That would make a very big difference. Let's see what happens now. Yep, it's moving. I've got an animation working now. It's not the animation I want, but it is doing something now when I do the right mouse button. Oh, because it's firing. I don't have the right animation set to it. But it is doing something, so I know it's working. I just don't have it set configured the way I want it to. Okay, so yes, make sure that you're using animation blueprint, and then it should say your anim class is your BP FPS anim. It may have an underscore C after that. It should have an underscore C after that. That's automatically inserted by Unreal. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to add the firing blueprint, and then we'll work on fixing problems, okay? We should have enough time to get through all of that. So I'm going back to my event graph for my BP FPS character. So go to event graph, and we're going to add firing. We already added aiming, so let's right click and IA firing. And we're going to want it to spawn an emitter where with whatever it collides with. In other words, we want rocks flying or bullets hitting objects, or something. We need a decal to go out there. So I'm going to drag off it is triggered, and I'm going to spawn emitter at location. Spawn emitter at location. But we need to tell it what is the location. So using the flash component, I'm going to drag that from my variables onto my scene, and I want to get the flash. Get flash needs to get the world location, so I'm going to drag off of flash, get world location. Here we go. It's a transformation. And this is actually just doing a ray trace from my gun to where it's aiming at. So that's going to get my world location. I also need to get the world rotation. So again, I'll drag off, get world rotation. And we'll drag that into rotation. Good. And then, what do we want it to do? Well, fortunately, there is an asset for the emitter. And if you remember, we were looking at them. And it was the Bellica. And I think it was world. Yeah. Bellica hits the world.
Or that's something we just And it was the.
No, this is a different one. Bellica hit world. And now, when we fire, in theory, it should show us hitting something. So I'll save and compile, go back to my first person shooter, run, and let's see what happens. Oh, that's blinding. I'm going to have to,
Right in the face.
yeah, I'm going to need to dim that a little bit because I can't see anything happening. But hey, it's shooting something. Yeah,
Also, I don't think
You're all
that's the
going
one
to
we
die.
edited. That's not the one we edited. You tried shrinking it.
that's something we need to go back into the spawner that we were working with before.
Is that the one you edited?
Yeah, that's the one we
That's
were.
not the one we animated. That's the
It's
wrong
not?
one.
Oh, okay. It's not. Yeah, that is it's hitting something. That's hit the world.
It was,
I was blinding and I know when I was walking because of that something.
what was it? What was it? It was
Wrong direction.
It's still far.
It's evolving. Just
It's evolving.
Abilities, ultimate, attack, primary attacks. Oh, it's Belka muzzle. That's I think that one muzzle. Yeah, it's muzzle. Belka muzzle's the one that we edited.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
question this very stupid. I didn't think about this.
Yeah, there it is. Belka muzzle.
Couldn't tell.
That's for the best.
Oh, okay. Yes, I've got the wrong emitter. That's the hit world. I need the muzzle. The one that we just created.
So not the
Not the hit world. Hit world's what we're going to do when it hits something or collides with something. We need what we just edited. The Bellica muzzle. Let's try that. Yeah, that's better. Though I'm shooting a lot of.
Yeah.
Try it, did you have two? You tried it.
Did I have two?
I don't know, I have
You had two?
mine for some reason.
I only have one.
I wanted to feel, even though we try to flip it really fast.
It's firing more than once.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Because there was one time where I was able to get one bullet, and then every other time it's been like 3 or 4.
Okay, so we'll need to play with that a little bit.
So it's like, really quick and roll.
Yeah. So we do have the muzzle going. Yeah, I think you're right. It's just really sensitive. And I do need to pull down that emission a little bit. That is really bright. But we can go back and play with that a little bit more. Okay, so there's one more thing I wanted to do for today. Actually, there's two more things, but I'm going to give one of them as an assignment. So, we've got our firing happening. We've got all kinds of cool stuff happening. I want to, when they are firing, we need to show where it's hitting. So I'm down here with my enhanced input action firing. And we're going to do a line trace. So I'm dragging off the spawn emitter at location. I want to do a line trace. Let's see. by channel. Now, channel keeps track of what can it collide with, what can a weapon hit. So any 3D object basically inside the environment. It's not going to hit lights, but it will hit any kind of a mesh that's inside the scene. So we've got our line trace by channel set up, and we need to tell it where it's going to be hitting. To do that, we're going to need to add a player manager. So player camera manager. Is that it? Nope, wrong one. Player camera. Get player camera manager. One right above it. And we need, from this, we need to get the player's location. And let's put on context sensitivity to make things easier. We're going to get the actor's location. And we need to get the actor's rotation. Oh, get actor forward rotation. There, forward vector. So now we know which direction the character's facing. Then we need to know, now right now it's going to go 1 meter out from the gun and look for any kind of collision. It would be nice if it went a little bit more than 1 unit or 1 meter. So let's have it multiply. I'm going to say multiply. And let's give it a big number, something like 5,000. X, Y, and Z 5,000. There we go. And from my character's location, I need to add. So add. And I'm going to drag that into my add. So we're now going from the current location to a vector location up to 5,000 units away. And we're adding that together, and that's going to be my end point. So now we just simply need to know what's the start point. Well, that's my character's location. Two more things and we're done. From my line trace, I'm going to, again, do a spawn emitter. So spawn, and this is our world explosion thing. So I'm going to spawn an emitter to happen at that location. And that's going to be that world explosion thing. Bellica world. Hit world. That's what I want. Hit world. And we're going to add one more object to this. Break hit result. And hit the down arrow on break hit result. And I'm going to go from impact location or impact point to location. So wherever my ray trace hit, that is the location, the impact point for my emitter to fire. Cool. Yeah.
Oh, I got here.
I did too.
You don't know what we're hitting.
Oh, yeah, I've got another line. I need to draw from here to hit. Nope. Out hit? Oh, out hit. That makes sense. Now we'll save and compile. Now it knows where to hit. Okay, your assignment for Thursday. There's this thing called Play Sound 2D. I want you to add it to your spawn emitter. So this, you're going to, you fired your gun. Your gun should make a sound. There are already audio in there. It's called Play Sound 2D. I want you to add a sound for Thursday. And play with your animations. Get everything working correctly. Okay, that's it for today. That was a lot, but we got through it all. Thursday, we're going to be adding our drones. So now we'll have something to shoot.
I think you mentioned that whenever you fire the drones, like, I have where it's aiming like it does that.
Yeah, see, it's hitting.
It's also doing something where it's like where I spawned. Spawns.
So it hasn't got the new location. Okay, so we'll have to do some more troubleshooting, but you do have firing working. That's a good thing.
I've got a lot of troubleshooting.
Okay, there's troubleshooting to be done. Work on that. Add your audio, and I'll take a look at those on Thursday. There won't be anything to submit to. I'm just going to come around and look and hear your audio working. That's it for today. Drones on Thursday.